Every podcast has that origin story. Nishita and I met in the Poets of Bangalore meet called the Kavimane Utsav, and it's a beautiful space that we were part of. So I saw her as a visual artist and heard her share. So she's both working with the traditional as well as the digital forms of visual art. And for her, the love for art started at a very young age. She works in a segment of working in the animation sector. She's worked in multiple spaces where in even putting her work in art exhibitions where she's won awards voluntarily. She's worked for NGOs that work with spreading awareness around street art. She's done an art fellowship with the Happy Hands Foundation. And yeah, I think more so we will discover what she's done, who she is, today's conversation.
You've given a very nice introduction about me in terms of art. But my art journey started when I was a very little kid. And it's a very funny story because I used to consider myself, and I somewhere still consider myself as a self taught artist. And I kind of got fascinated by art when I saw my dad's work. So, my dad is a totally self taught artist. When I was a kid, I used to just sneak in and look at his work that he had just shoved in the cupboard somewhere. Used to open that, look at that for hours. Till that time, mom used to just come back and say, just you now you have to come back to reality and work your schoolwork or help me in the housework. But I still remember that is where my love for art started. I still remember like three of my dad's paintings or sketches. So he had like drawn this big A4 size, A1 size sheet where Bruce Lee's pencil sketch he had done.
Oh, wow.
Corner to corner, and one was Madhuwala, like corner to corner, and in fact Charlie Chaplin, corner to corner. So those were the starting points for me where I was fascinated by art, and I was as young as what, like 6, 7, where I used to just look at that and think that one day I would do such kind of work and make my dad proud. So that is what is still carrying on in terms of making my parents proud for creativity that they have and they might have passed on to me.
So that's fantastic. So I gave you a very formal introduction saying, this is what you do. And if I have to ask you to introduce yourself, maybe you're talking to a 3-year-old kid. And how would you sort of introduce yourself?
I just tell them that I'm a creative soul who loves to observe whatever is around and who loves colors so much that she cannot live without colors even like once. I don't like to attach myself to professional labels because somewhere or the other, everyone is an artist in themselves. Either the way they express how they dress or how they take care of the house or how they take care of their environment or how they talk, how they put across their words. So I feel that I'm a creative soul. So that's how I introduce myself.
So what draws you to art? Like how was it? So you saw your dad's artwork, but what was internally to you that sort of pulled you in?
I feel that I always get drawn to nature a lot, observing shapes, observing light. My phone is filled with photographs where how light is falling on things. So it is what draws me towards creativity till now. Of course, it started with looking at my dad's work, but somewhere now I've realized that even at that time, I was looking at how he's managed only black and white and creating shapes out of it that form an artwork. So it's majorly how light interacts with things, anything. So that is how nature interacts with things. Nature, I believe, is the biggest artist of all.
Absolutely.
So that is what attracts me towards creativity. Uh, there was a thing that one of my teachers, I think my principal had said in school that if you want to see different kind of green as a color, you should go to east of India. So colors, basically the way colors are in our nature and how it interacts with each other. Pure bliss to just look at it. So nature, light, colors is what drives me into creativity.
Hmm. And how did it feel to have that journey from your first artwork to maybe until now?
Oh, it's been surreal. Trust me, it's had its ups and downs. Sometimes the downs are a place where you feel, oh my god, when it is going to get over. I know people talk about creatives being very bubbly, very chirpy, but they have their time. So it's been a roller coaster ride, and it's been a ride that I will not exchange for anything else, to be very honest.
Fantastic. Now, as a fellow creator myself, I think I completely understand. So this, it's not about revenue, it's not about money, it's not about recognition. It becomes an inner calling, and after that, it just is you don't want to exchange it for anything else, like you said.
uh, I have had, I don't want to start off the conversation, like have a conversation with respect to dark times, but I think, and all of the artists have that kind of a time period where they feel, oh my god, what is it going to result into? Am I creating enough? Am I just calling myself as an artist, but and not doing justice to the craft? But trust me, even in that time period, even when you're not creating, you're still an artist. Creating can mean anything, not just a painting, be anything. You're still an artist. So people should not be thinking that, okay, there's just always highs, there's lows as well, but the journey is the best thing. Coming out of that part and creating, even if you're not creating in that part, you're still an artist. So, yeah.
Absolutely true. Because we are in that generation where the social media is filled with constancy being a space. So today I've created one, tomorrow I need to do that. So this one had, say, 100 shares, the other one has to at least have 101. So a lot of pressure on artists to keep delivering and keep sort of pushing themselves hard. And burnout is a very, very strong space that a lot of us go through. But if you've been, I'm sure you've had that phases. So what got you out of that phase and sort of got back to what you love most?
Trust me, I have been there. There have been multiple times I have been in that burnout space. There was a, I'll talk about the burnout space, then I come to a place where art literally saved my life. So, burnout, I used to look at the numbers on social media. Trust me, like a couple of years back when art was not a kind of place where people used to earn revenue, but Instagram or social media was still a place where people could display your work and it would reach to the. I used to be totally engrossed with numbers. I used to look at my social media post. I used to post every goddamn day, and something new that I want to do, create reels, create. The trends were not in the trend at that time when I was trying to create reels. It burnt me out really bad, and that was the time I had stopped. The curiosity of the child that is there when you create something, that curiosity had gone because I was only chasing numbers. That acha, aaj ek reel hai that is going to, as you said, 100 views. Tomorrow the reel is supposed to get 101 views or 110 views, 120 views. So what strategies to put? There was a time I had hired a social media specialist also. Like, what should I do to get more views? But then I took a pause. I was like, why did I start creating in the first place? When I started creating, there was no nishan of social media. Social media only existed when your friends are calling to you from downstairs of your and like screaming at you, come play, it's already 6 o'clock. That was social media or social interaction. So I started creating because it was fun. I started creating because it called to my inner child. It called to me in terms of expressions. And that is what I hit a pause. I was like, okay, fine. I need to understand what is my motive over here. Is getting views my motive, or is it that I want to create because I love create? And the latter is what was true. I love creating, and sometimes today when I like put a reel, it does not get views that I'm expecting. I'm like, it's okay. It's getting what it is supposed to get because of the algorithm, because it's all messed up right now. Social media is not the way it was when it was created. So there's no point pleasing it. You create for yourself. You put your work out and you hope the right people find it. And just like that, you and I are interacting. Maybe this is how my work was supposed to find the correct people to connect with. in an offline platform where I was talking about my work, giving my work as a display, and you happen to walk on over there with your creativity of poems because your love for poems, storytelling, and that is how we were supposed to connect. So, in the end, the burnout comes to everyone. But you have to decide, why did you start creating in the first place? Was it because of likes, views? And if that is the reason why you're creating, then I don't think that will be the correct reason, because every day nowadays technology is improving so much. I just read about how AI is now going to create things that you are not just giving prompts for, but what you're imagining as well. Like, this is so messed up on different levels in terms of creativity. But if you want to create, you cannot take the human factor out. So if you love to create, you will always create. You will come out of the burnout in your timeline. There is no timeline to come out of the burnout. You keep on creating, even if it is just a line, or even if it is just one sentence, or even just one word. But always remember, that is what worked for me. Always remember why you started doing that in the first place. Your passion. Always remember your passion for that art, that creativity. So that is how I try to get out of the burnout that I'm feeling. Going back to the roots.
Oh, yeah. Once you go to the why, everything else, the other noise is cut off. So you are doing it, the joy, the fun, the passion, the interest, the childlike curiosity, the wonder of creating something on your own. Everything sort of just comes into play. And I have a follow-up question around the burnout. And I get this question a lot because I also, from an artist point of view, was also like two timing, right? So a lot of the aspects where you have a corporate journey, and then you're also fully drawn into something that gives you life through for you in terms of art, in terms of me, poetry. How do you sort of balance that space?
I would say creativity is part of me. I am part of creativity. I cannot put it as two separate things. The corporate job also that I selected is around creativity. So how do I balance it? I try to create, I'm in the process of trying to balance it right now. I try to create small work, not think about like bigger chunks of work. So, oh my God, I have to finish like a 5-inch painting, or like a 5 feet painting. Sorry, there was a time I used to create 5 feet, 6 feet paintings, but now, yes, I have a day job, and there is a notion behind art that people who are doing art are just engrossed in the work, and they have so I read this somewhere that artists thrive when they are taken care of. In terms of taken care of, when I mean is monetary taken care of. There in your history, if you look at, there are so many artists who were on kings and queens or your powerful people's payrolls, where they were not worried about the money aspect. So they just created. So here, when the money aspect comes in terms of corporate job, you have a day job, you have to sustain your life. Art is not what I'm earning currently out of, but when I have artists who earn full time out of art as well. And balancing art then comes as creating something for your own soul. So on an everyday basis, or I would say maybe like on a weekly basis, create small pieces of work. I have multiple sketchbooks. So I have like a tiny sketchbook where if I'm feeling totally out of my brains that I really want to create something, but I don't have inspiration in terms of a concept, there is very beautiful thing that a lot of us would connect with, is an artist love eyes. So I start creating by eyes, and then whatever flows. If I want to create 5 minutes, I'll create 5 minutes. If I'm in deeper in that process, I will create for like another 10 minutes, 20 minutes. So yes, I have a day job. Yes, I have to finish that. And yes, it is needed for sustaining in this particular world where everything outside is on fire. And technology is literally like evolving at speed of light. So creativity is for soul. So whenever there is nooks and crannies of your time. Couple of weeks back, I was just sitting in a cafe on a weekend, waiting for my friend. My phone was totally dead, so I had put it on charging, and I was like, okay, fine. What should I do? Because we are so much trained in terms of getting stuck on our phone that we forget about observing what is around us. And that time, I just went to the cashier. I was like, "Can you give me a pen?" He lent me a pen. I didn't have a sketchbook. I was like, okay, fine. What do I do? I just took a tissue paper out. I started sketching whatever was right in front of me. Like good amount of 30 minutes. It was phone free, total time period that I was just sketching. It was not something for your exhibition or something that I would create a print and sell for. It was for my soul. It was me connecting with my creativity. Yes, on weekdays I am working, I'm stuck in front of a laptop, but maybe on a weekend when I'm waiting for a friend to just come and meet me in a cafe, I can pick up a pen, paper, and just start randomly sketching on things. So creativity is not separate from what I am. It's part of me. Balancing is where I give myself time to get into that zone, even if it is like it takes me time, enough time where I am in a dull time period, but doing random things, doing random sketches, small sketches, not thinking about okay making big masterpieces because that does not come when you're pressurizing yourself. That okay, fine, you have to create. You are not created. You have not created. You're only focusing on your work. You're only focusing on your 9 to 5. So create small. You create for fun. You try to get yourself back into that particular zone. Create for 5 minutes. Create for like 2 minutes, even not 5 minutes. You see 5 minutes is a pressureful time for you. Create for 2 minutes. Do some scribbling, and if you feel like it, continue. If you don't feel like it, you stop. You go back to whatever chores you're supposed to do, and you come back whenever you're feeling that you want to come back. That is how.
Have you had any interaction with the imposter syndrome saying this is not good enough? So I'm sure your your smile gave it away. So I'll wait for the story.
Oh my god, imposter syndrome hits so bad sometimes. It is I feel all the artists, irrespective of what genre that they practice as creativity, they have been in that zone once in their lifetime where they are so self-critical of themselves. But if it was their friend or if it was someone else, they would praise them left, right, and center. So yes, imposter syndrome hits really bad. I was talking to a friend couple of days back because of the imposter syndrome as well itself, that what do I do? I am such a bad critique when it comes to my work, but I know for a fact when it is someone else, I will not be that critical. I will be as positive as I can be. And my friend just gave me one sentence. She's like, why can't you see yourself from the same eyes that you're looking at your friend from? Consider yourself your own friend. Do not look at yourself, oh my god, this line is not correct. Oh my god, this color was not supposed to be like this. Oh my god. Fine. It is okay to make mistakes. It is absolutely fine. That is how creativity comes into picture. That is how art comes into picture. So, yes, imposter syndrome is a real thing, and sometimes it is a pain to come out of. But as I said, you need to be kind to yourself. You need to give yourself that much of leeway that, okay, fine. It's absolutely fine. Imperfections are beautiful. And it's amazing to be imperfect humans because that is what is needed when it comes to creativity. Not your perfect line, not your perfect color palette, not your perfect composition, maybe. You look at the impressionists that were there, like my favorite artist, Vincent Van Gogh. Oh my god, that work that he's done, you look at the work from near, it does not make any sense, but you look at the work from far away, all the colors merge into the places where they are supposed to be, all the compositions come together. So don't be that self-critical of yourself. I keep on telling myself this. I am not a perfect human being. Sometimes I fall into the pit where I am the critical person, that I seek out help to my friends. And it's absolutely fine to talk to people in that time where there are have a good circle of people who do not look down upon you, who try to motivate you, who pick you up when you need that kind of energy. And I'm blessed that when I came to Bangalore, I made such amazing friends that just help whenever it is needed. I remember my first exhibition. I made a friend at that time. There was he's a photographer. I'm an artist, and both of our works were right next to each other. And this is the first interaction that I'm having with this person. He's promoting my work, and I'm promoting his work to random strangers, and that is 4 years back, and we are still that kind of crazy people where we are promoting each other's work to everyone. And that is how you need to have your circle that are uplifting you when you need it. So that is how basically I deal with imposter syndrome.
Fantastic. So, two questions. Feel free to answer in whatever order. How is it to sell an artwork? Because there's whatever you said is the creating bit, right? So there's a separate process there, but then there's also a space where you're giving something that you've created and done to someone else as it.
Yeah.
So how's that transition, and how's your experience been with setting up aspects around visual art, the exhibitions, places like even at Ports of Bangalore? How's that experience been for you?
I'll come to the story. It was not for selling purpose. I had participated in a competition that was an all India competition. I came fourth, and I had to give my painting as to exhibit. Okay, this was my artwork that came fourth. So it was exhibited for somewhere around like 5 days. The clause over there was that after those 5 days, I am supposed to give that painting to that organization away. I'm not getting any monetary aspect. Of course, I'm getting that title, I'm getting a certificate, I'm getting a hamper or whatever. But I was supposed to give that painting away. I had put my blood, heart, soul, tears, everything into that painting to create it. It was an original concept, and it was very difficult to part ways from. But I remember this as it was yesterday. I had to give that painting. I had a tear in my eye that, oh my god, I have to give this away. I gave that painting, I went upstairs, I came back, I literally said goodbye painting, and you will be missed in my collection. I said it out loud, and I went back in the car. My mom gave me a look. She's like, why are you crying? It's like, because I am attached to that work. I say this to so many people, or whosoever I come across who talks about art with me, that an artist puts a part of their soul in their work. Even if it is just a scribble, or even if it is just a line that a poet writes, they are putting a part of the soul in their work. So whosoever takes that work is taking a part of that artist along with them. So when it comes to selling the work, I've come to terms with, okay, fine, I have to I've rewired my brain when it comes to like, okay, fine, if someone is taking or buying my work, it's like, okay, fine, they're not just taking my work, they're taking my creativity, they're taking a piece of Nishita along with them. And even after years, that particular piece of me is going to live with someone in terms of a decorative piece or a print or a card or whatever. So it used to be very difficult initially, but I remember one of my teachers comment on this part where he sketched something, and it was a video session and pre-recorded video session where he sketched, and he's like, artists get attached to their work so much that it is difficult for them to part ways and sell it then. And he mentioned in a video, pre-recorded video, now I'm going to destroy this work. And he literally destroyed the work in front of us. And in a pre-recorded video, we are screaming no. And he paused and he said, I know that you guys are saying no right now. It's a pre-recorded video. And he is saying that because he knows that even as artists, right now, what our reaction will be. So there is, of course, emotional attachment, but if you're doing something for commercial reasons, you need to differentiate between, okay, fine, I am going to put my soul in it, but I know that this is something that is going to fetch money out of for me. So I am making it from that perspective, that I need money from this. But there is something for your soul that you have created, and you're not selling it. I have a couple of paintings with me that I know I'm not going to sell. I will keep it till the time I die. And because there is an emotional attachment to it. So it gets difficult. Yes, it does. There are two different aspects sometimes. Sometimes your soul creations also get sold. And when that comes, you need to rewire your brain to say that, okay, it's going to get a good home. It's going to get a good place. A lot of people love it. And you just have to make peace with it.
Yeah.
And let it go. and be happy that part of your soul is going to a person who appreciates your creativity. So that is how I have dealt with in terms of how my work. I have couple of works here and there across the world, but now I feel yes, they are in good places. They are in places that people appreciate.
Wow.
Uh, So that is as per first question. Second, I think, was with respect to exhibitions and stalls, how to come up with
Yes.
that. I would have loved to be represented by a gallery, but there is a catch when it comes to that. Traditional galleries ask a hefty amount of commissions. Sometimes it goes up till 50% of commissions that they are charging. So artists, when it goes breaks down, so artists generally don't get that much of money that work is generating, and the cycle continues. There are bigger galleries that charge even bigger sum of commission, but there are galleries that ask you to put your work for maybe like a certain rent amount. That okay, it's an exhibition for 5 days. We are going to charge you this much amount of money, and you put up your work. If your works get sold, that's 100% your earning because we
Mm-hmm.
asked you for a rent, and that is how it is. The first exhibition that I put in Bangalore was in your the gallery that is right underneath the MG Road metro station, and
Rangoli Metro Station.
yes, Rangoli metro station. They charged a very nominal amount of money, and it was a 3 day exhibition. So I put up my work over there. I got to know about an art collective from there, and so on and so forth. Similar is the case with stalls. That if you're putting up a stall with a collective, there is a certain amount of rent, and then whatever earnings you are doing, it's all up to you. When it comes to experience of all of these, that's a monetary aspect. When it comes to the experience, both of the experience I really enjoy. Uh, when you're in an exhibition, you get to talk about the work that you have displayed. And I have literally gotten to know so many different kinds of meanings because uh, when it comes to art, and that is visual art, this quote is absolutely true that the beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. That the viewer and the observer is as important as the creator. So I have gotten to know meanings of my work that even I didn't know that meanings it held. So those came from the exhibitions that I had put up. And my mind was like, oh my God, I didn't even think that while I was creating. That is what it gives when another observer is looking at. When it comes to stalls, yes, you give away your work in terms of certain money because, of course, you're selling your work over there. That is the purpose of putting up a stall. Even in that place, even in Poets of Bangalore, there were some amazing people who came up to me, who talked about work, who talked about art, talked about how they want to get connected to art. They don't know art, but they still want to have small, small pieces because that reminds them of how childlike it should be, that you should not forget your childlike side, and you should not always be very serious about work. There were people who wanted to gift their significant others something, and they chose art for that. So those kinds of stories is what I encounter when I put up a stall or I put up an exhibition, and it gives me it fuels my creativity again because it feels okay, there are people who are connecting with my work, and sometimes in a way that I did not connect with my work. So yeah, that is how experience of exhibitions and stalls have gone.
Do you have something handy that you would like to show us? Any of your
Yeah,
art?
I have a couple of works that I was really eager to show. So there are certain prints that I have of my work, if you see here, and this is something with respect to very self-healing journey. These all are original works.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that I connect with a lot.
Would you like
And
to pause and tell what made you do that?
I was in a place I was in a place where I was searching for things in all the wrong places, and I was getting hurt in my personal life, and as it says in romantic sense as well. And then I just paused. I was like, I think it's not what I am looking for. I need to first give that love to me rather than looking outside for it, and that is how this came into picture. Where if you see that here she's hurt, but she's trying to put like flowers into it, and the quote says that she became the love she's looking for. So that is what I resonate with. That technically you should first be this version that you seek that other people would want you to be. You should want yourself to be that first. So that is how that particular art came into picture. And then this is a very journey centric work that I have done. It is my work. I was shocked when I got this print. I was like, did I give a photograph of my reference or did I actually give my work? Because I was surprised that did I make this? Sometimes artists surprise themselves like that. So my friend gave the meaning to this that it feels that this girl is waiting for a journey. I named it Journey, that she wants to go somewhere, but she's just waiting for the train to come and hop onto that. It's like, I didn't think about it when I created this. It is, as I said, observer's meaning.
Yeah.
The one more, that is, this was a collaboration I did with a musician, and he gave a flute piece, and I created an artwork out of it. Its animated version is on my Instagram, where it flaps its wings and there is the music that's in the background. So, yeah, those are the prints that I have. I have some handmade pieces also with me that if you want, I can show that around as well.
If you have Tandable, why not?
Oh, yes, I do. Just give me a second. This is one of my favorite pieces of watercolor. I had literally butchered it, and I was in a place. I was like, how do I revive it? And I connected with. It's a beauty of creativity, and I think creative community, be it any form of creativity, is amazing when it comes to health. I was talking to an influencer at that time who does watercolors, and she has like a very good amount of following. I messaged her. I was like, I need her help. I have just butchered my work. What do I do? And she helped me step by step, and I revived my work, and it just came out like that.
So, what are you most proud about yourself? Could be multiple stories.
I am proud that I did not give up on life when I was at my lowest, and art literally saved my life. I was in a very dark space where I had thought about why do I even want to exist? And that time I was pushed to art, and art saved my life. I used to just put on my headphones, create all day, and I'm proud of that I did not give up. I did not give up on myself. I did not give up on the journey that I was supposed to take up in life. So people talk about possessions in terms of your materialistic possessions or relations. I'm proud of all of those things, but I'm proud of myself in terms of I did not give up on me. I came out of that particular downtime really strong, and when I look back at that, like 10 years ago, where I was in a place where I thought if nothing makes sense. Things are not how what I wanted it to be. I was in a place where I was like, I'll just vanish from this world. No one would miss me. No, nothing is making any sense. And I did not give up. I rallied through. I did not give up on myself. I did not give up on life. I did not give up on. Everyone faces struggles. Everyone. We are not perfect human beings. That is a myth. And if you give up, you cave in. There are a lot of people who look for just even a tiny bit to hold on to. I would just say, hold on to that hope. Things will become better because I have gone through it. I have seen that. And I am genuinely proud of myself that I did not give up. I was part of 2 fellowships back in Delhi, one being Happy Hands, actually 3. It started with Street Art India. They work with a lot of art. I was a volunteer over there. They work with a lot of street artists. They beautify places across the country. They have done a lot of beautification. So that, then there was one Happy Hands where they worked with a very endangered art, that is Cherial art, and they created a format where we as art fellows had to teach kids and make scrolls. So we made a scroll, and the kids made a scroll after learning the art form. So those fellowships made me connect with art in a very different way, where I was a part of a community that was making the same kind of art, and there was not a lot of monetary gain over there, but it was connecting with art with a purpose. Street Art India was, of course, not just beautifying the city, but taking certain art pieces and expressing yourself. So there was one main artist, and there were volunteers that were helping them out. So there is a entire district in Delhi called your Walk-in Art District in Meherchand Market. So people can go over there. I think there are 30 plus walls, big ass walls that have artwork. Cherial art, it was Telangana's most endangered art, and I think still there's just one art family that practices it, and we got a chance to learn that art, make a scroll out of it, and it's a storyteller's art form. How ironic and how beautifully, like, coming to the end of this is that it is a storyteller's art form where you tell a story through different panels and scrolls, and that is an art form where TVs and your digital mediums are not there in like remote parts of the country. Still, that kind of storytelling goes on. So that is what I was part of, and just loved being doing such kind of.
Wow. Oh, beautiful. The last question, how did it feel to be a part of this podcast? Specifically from the angle that why should women tell their stories?
I will be very honest. You asked me, I was like, I would love to be part of something like this. Women are, today in day and age, women are speaking up about how they have dealt with things. Uh, we did talk about a lot of creative things, but there are a lot of stories when it comes to what I have gone through, and I just find it really nice that and then helping women to give them that space, talking about what stories they've gone through, that is the most amazing thing. Because yes, women need to speak up in terms of what they have gone through, what stories they have, how they are literally day to day living, and getting their thought processes out. And if you have men by them, like as allies, helping them out, that's the beautiful thing. So I never even gave like one thought. I was like, you asked, I was like, yes, definitely, I would be part of it. I would love to talk about what stories I have, and it's a beautiful thing that you're doing. And I would love to come up again if you have some other segment coming up.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think uh, more and more stories are there. I'm sure we've just sort of dipped into the story bag of stories. And I was very happy that, I asked and you said yes, because most of the times my biggest struggle in inviting women to the podcast is saying, Sunil, what do you think? It's too small. I don't think I've achieved much. And so it's a whole process to cajole them, to get them here, talk to them. And once they start talking, I have to be like, look, I have to switch off the podcast now. So I get that quite a lot. And when you said, you're more than happy, and I said, look, my job's easier, and you have a fantastic stories to share, and then your journey becomes then a pivotal point or a catalyst for somebody else. To look at life differently, to be inspired, to share it to others. And we don't know who this reaches and where it takes it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where we pause for today.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.